People have to wonder, where does Sunny Hostin get her opinions?
Yeah.
Like you said, and it's obviously from her husband. She has to tell her what to say on The View, because without it, she's got nothing up there. She's not very bright. But the problem with her is that she went full racist. She injected skin color into a fairly generic behavior seen in all spouses, regardless of skin color. People marry, they listen to each other, they have something in common with them, they share their political views. She just didn't want to upset her husband by saying her husband makes her do everything, and then she'd have to accuse him of being a racist. Because if he told her that this is what white women do, then he's a racist. You see?
When Greg Gutfeld and Bill Maher joined forces to take on The View, it's not just a roast. It's a verbal annihilation so brutal, even Whoopi's wig considered waving the white flag. They didn't merely cast shade, they unleashed a solar eclipse of snark. One dissected the show's double standards with surgical precision, while the other set the wreckage ablaze with biting wit. If you thought daytime TV was all sunshine and small talk, guess again, this wasn't just another Hot Topics segment. It was a scorched earth intervention on aisle mayhem. Strap in, because this takedown doesn't stop for ad breaks.
And by the way, out there, that hat that you keep wearing, that red hat that says "Make America Great Again," that tells people that you go along with this. So you might as well just put a swastika on the hat.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
Because we see it anyway.
I'm not going to defend Donald Trump ever, but I would never say that we should put the swastika on the cap, because I think you can hate Donald Trump. You can't hate everybody who likes him. It's half the country. I don't want to live in that country. I don't want to live in the country where I hate half the country, and I don't hate half the country.
How dare you disagree?
Oh, The View, a relentless merry-go-round of interruptions, incoherence, and espresso-powered zingers. It's less a talk show and more a daytime soap opera where subtlety is DOA and reason clocked out years ago. Plop a Nobel laureate onto that panel, and within minutes, they'd be cradling a latte in defeat, muttering, "When did facts become the enemy?" But hold on tight, two rogue commentators just crashed the party. Say hello to Greg Gutfeld and Bill Maher. Proof that nothing brings together odd bedfellows quite like a shared appetite for chaos.
Sausage maker Johnsonville is recalling more than 42,000 pounds of pork sausage for possible contamination with plastic fibers. Fortunately, authorities were able to track all 42,000 pounds to a single location in New York City.
One's a conservative firebrand who delivers quips like he's mainlining dark roast and sarcasm. The other's a left-leaning skeptic who believes woke culture is the true plague of our times. So, when both zero in on The View as their target, you know it's about to get feral. Like watching two piranhas decide the ship's already doomed, then start gnawing on the wreckage just for kicks. But listen to this. Greg Gutfeld, Fox News' resident court jester, has basically made shredding The View his moonlight gig. It's not even a pastime anymore, it's a sacred rite, performed with the precision of a Swiss watch and the venom of a stand-up comic scorned.
Joy Behar calls her a 10. I mean, how dare she objectify a woman with a sexist rating system, but it's such a typical thing from a 1.5.
Well said.
The panel spouts something ridiculous. Greg catches wind of it, rolls his eyes so hard he could power a wind turbine, and then launches into a verbal cage match, tearing apart what he dubs daytime TV's ultimate self-esteem circus. His biggest beef? That The View pretends to be a debate, when really it's just five people shouting in perfect harmony, each utterly convinced they're the sole beacon of wisdom in a cacophony of nonsense. But wait, it gets better. Greg once quipped that tuning into The View feels like watching a group project where nobody cracked open the textbook, yet everyone's posturing as the professor. He skewers Joy Behar for remixing history on the fly, ribs Sunny Hostin for treating every discussion like a trial she's already won in her own mind, and mocks Whoopi's chameleonic role as the planet's most befuddled sage. Forget a Hot Topics table. It's a whirlwind of half-baked hot takes.
Joy Behar gets racism after all. She's been black on Halloween. Yeah. But Joy wasn't there on the show. Apparently Mondays are her days off when she feeds in the pasture. But that is convenient, right? It's like one of my aunts dies every time Brian Kilmeade wants to hang out. Maybe Joy needs a full day to read her hate mail, and that's just from the rest of the cast.
Just when you think the roast has reached nuclear levels, enter Bill Maher, like a guy who's built a penthouse on Smug Mountain and throws dinner parties where the appetizers are grenades of unfiltered truth. If Gutfeld is the sharpshooter, picking off hypocrisy with precision from afar, Marr is the wrecking ball. Sauntering onto the scene with a smirk and a lit fuse, Marr's the kind of liberal who gives other liberals hives. Pro-pot, pro-free thought, and unapologetically anti-bullshit. He doesn't care whose team jersey you're wearing if your argument's flimsy.
Obviously, just the parts that you said. Did I watch a whole episode of The View?
No woman can do that unless you're stupid. But
I have a job.
Here's the thing. How can they call themselves progressives when they keep saying that nothing has progressed? Then it's on them.
Right. I just wish I could have, would have watched if I could, would have been Joy Behar watching that.
Yes.
And being like, I totally made the right call. It was not an accident that they had him there on her day off when she was, presented herself as the, expert on systemic racism as a white lady.
Well, she had that one Halloween where she went as Diana Ross and she felt she was treated differently.
But hold up, it gets juicier. When even Bill Maher starts dunking on The View, you know the show's gone so far off the rails, even the professional devil's advocates are sounding the alarm. His biggest issue? The View's pathological aversion to complexity. Marr argues that dissent on the show isn't met with discussion, it's met with DEFCON level panic. Dare to stray from the script, and suddenly you're not just wrong, you're toxic, patriarchal, or his personal favorite, spiritually unwalked. To Marr, it's not a debate, it's a triage unit. Open your mouth and they'll slap a scarlet letter on your chest, demand a groveling mea culpa, and let the Twitter mob handle the rest. He's eviscerated their theatrical tantrums, their obsession with moral grandstanding, and their knack for turning even the most trivial issue into a full-blown apocalypse. Watching The View, he says, is like being stuck in a fire drill where everyone's screaming that you lit the match. And Marr doesn't just skim the surface, he dives deep. He ridicules their habit of citing headlines they've only skimmed, their tendency to communicate in buzzwords instead of coherent thoughts, and their bizarre belief that yelling louder somehow counts as a checkmate.
Well, I had a different question, but it struck me that in the first segment you used the term woke, and you said that woke is what was sort of ruining everything. And I know that you're...
No, I didn't say ruining everything. I said that's why Trump could get reelected.
That's why Trump could get reelected.
Yeah.
So the term woke has been, in my view, co-opted by the right and weaponized and bastardized. And so I was surprised to hear you use the term because historically, as you know, because I think you're quite brilliant, that woke is a word used by the black community to note that we must be aware of social injustices.
But words
and
migrate.
So why is that a bad thing?
It's not a bad thing, and originally that was absolutely a great...
If Gutfeld slams The View for peddling a counterfeit version of diverse opinions, Marr goes even harder, charging them with abandoning the very concept of intellectual honesty. His critiques hit with a blend of sneer and sigh, like a man who's not just entertained by the absurdity, but quietly dismayed that the standards have plummeted this far. When a show becomes so formulaic you could write the host's reactions in your sleep, Marr starts to ask, is this still a talk show or just a tribal ritual with branded coffee cups? And here's the real gut punch. Gutfeld and Marr actually see eye to eye. These two, who'd probably bicker over whether rain is wet if you gave them a shared umbrella, somehow stumbled onto the same page. And that page reads like the setup to a savage punchline. The View has morphed into accidental satire. Only the gags fall flat, and the zingers confuse themselves for gospel. Both men view the show not as a discussion platform, but as a piece of political theater, where every topic is spun into an existential crisis. And every fix feels like a group therapy session with brass knuckles.
Whoopi Goldberg, because I got so many texts this week because she attacked me the week before.
Sure.
So everybody was like, oh, Bill, I get you're enjoying the karma. First of all, I'm going to talk about this at the end of my show next week, teaser. But there is no fucking thing as karma, okay? Get over that. Whoopi attacks me on a regular basis. She says stupid shit on a regular basis. They just happen to coincide. But
they're in lockstep that the show stomps out free thought like it's a fire hazard. They nod in unison that the audience is conditioned to applaud on command, like they're at a caffeine-fueled cage match instead of a talk show. And in a twist that's almost too funny to handle, they both marvel at how The View has become the one place where voicing a dissenting opinion is more dangerous than showing up barefaced on live TV. Gutfeld dubs it dogma dressed up as debate. Marr brands it a sermon with sponsored ad breaks, and the kicker? They're both dead on.
I'm old enough to remember when it was the conservatives who hated the Jews.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bill Maher, who has been the standard bearer for liberalism and in many ways leftism until the woke went bananas in this last decade, but for decades, that's what this guy has represented in America. I want you to note the tone they all talk with him. I want you to look at Sunny Hostin's body language and the way they look at him and everything else. Just because he is a lefty who hasn't gone completely bananas, here they are.
And the View hosts, oh, they were livid. You could almost see the vapor trails curling off their coffee cups as those viral clips ricocheted across the internet. The rare moments they dared to fire back, it was like watching someone try to douse a wildfire with confetti. Flustered, flailing, and spectacularly off. But here's the real twist. The internet ate it up. Audiences from both ends of the political spectrum witnessed something almost mythical, sworn adversaries finding common ground. And not just any ground, hilarious ground. People cracked up because the jabs rang true, because The View, with all its sanctimonious swagger, had unwittingly become the very caricature it claims to despise, formulaic, overbearing, hopelessly disconnected. The aftermath, as predictable as it was cringe-inducing. Abruptly, the show clammed up about the whole thing. No clever counter-arguments, no introspection, just forced grins and a hasty subject change, as if they hadn't just been handed a gourmet takedown with a garnish of brutal honesty. It was as if someone had plunked a full-length mirror onto the set and not a single host dared to peek at the reflection.
Canada, apparently they're throwing tariffs on manatee meat and bovine semen, which means The View is very unhappy.
Oh.
And here's the delicious irony that ties it all up in a bow. A show that prides itself on sparking tough conversations completely crumbled the second two outsiders dared to start one. Gutfeld and Marr didn't lob grenades. They dished out razor-sharp truths wrapped in wit and dripping with satire. And The View? They dove for cover under the desk, praying the Nielsen ratings wouldn't peak at the carnage. But the audience saw it all, because when a Fox News provocateur and a liberal HBO icon team up for an impromptu intervention on your so-called dialogue, it's not just a roast, it's a wake-up call. And let's zoom out to the real heart of the matter. This wasn't just about dunking on a daytime talk show. It was about shining a spotlight on what happens when a platform stops engaging and starts sermonizing. When it swaps genuine inquiry for viral sound bites. When it forgets that disagreement isn't a threat, it's the lifeblood of democracy. Gutfeld and Marr might not even share a cab, let alone a worldview. They'll likely spend eternity sniping at each other's politics. But in that fleeting, brilliant moment, they locked eyes on a shared truth. The View has derailed so far, it's practically a parody of itself. And the script they're still clinging to? It's begging for the shredder right alongside the teleprompter they don't even need because, let's face it, the whole panel's reciting the same hymn sheet anyway. So if The View ever wants to claw back some shred of credibility, maybe it's time to welcome real dissent, not just as a rating stunt, but as a lifeline. Because when your sharpest critics outshine your hosts in humor, clarity, and sheer intellectual honesty, maybe, just maybe, it's time to dial down the self-righteous decibels and crank up the actual reasoning. Don't bet on it, because the only sound louder than The View's self-congratulatory cheers is the deafening quiet when someone dares to call their bluff. And if you think this was a one-and-done takedown, think again. Gutfeld and Marr may not be buddies, but they've sniffed out a mutual foe. And let's just say The View won't be penciling them into the guest list anytime soon. Because when the jesters start pointing fingers at the big top, you know the circus is on borrowed time. And here's where the story circles back in the most poetic and pathetic way imaginable. When the jesters sound more rational than the ringmasters, the big tent's one gust away from caving in. We're not talking about random TikTok critics or keyboard warriors here. We're talking about Greg Gutfeld, a guy who's turned snark into a Fox News paycheck. And Bill Maher, the liberal contrarian who used to skewer conservatives over his morning espresso. And yet, both of these professional agitators took one glance at The View and said, nope, that's too far. Let that marinate.
You look tantalizing. You know, I make fun of The View a lot, but that's only because they keep talking. Because COVID also taught Sunny Hostin how to get her groceries delivered.
3 years, that's when I discovered Instacart. And I give them a big tip because they don't always pay their people well. And it's so that's been an issue, I think, for the company. But man, you can get toiletries, you can get fire logs.
Fire logs? She had to tell the audience that she tips big because even she knows she sounds insufferable.
You've got a right-wing funny man who thinks half the nation's been hijacked by a woke clown car, and a left-leaning renegade who was hosting Politically Incorrect back when cancel culture was still doodling in the margins. And yet, both of them, zeroed in on the same train wreck, that daytime spectacle of coffee mugs and unhinged energy. At this stage, it's not just criticism, it's an exorcism. It's that gut punch moment when you realize The View has burrowed so deep into its own echo chamber, even its philosophical cousins are lobbing Molotovs at the bubble. And here's the kicker. These weren't natural adversaries, not at first. Marr, he used to be their kindred spirit, the snarky lighthouse guiding their progressive ship. And Gutfeld, sure, he was their designated punching bag, but even punching bags have a breaking point. When both descend on you like exasperated teachers watching their star pupil flunk a pop quiz, they wrote, it's no longer just comedy, it's a flare gun in the dark. And you can feel the shift. The View has systematically exiled anyone with a shred of wit, or, heaven forbid, a backbone. You either clap on cue for the rehearsed meltdowns, or you're met with glares sharp enough to slice through a teleprompter. And the real gutbuster? The ones sounding the alarm, the so-called extremists, the guys who make a living tap dancing on political third rails, are suddenly coming off as more grounded, more measured, and, dare we say it, more sane than the panelists at the table. Let that paradox marinate, because when the professional troublemakers start looking like the voices of reason, maybe it's time to wonder who's really lost the plot.
Whoopi Goldberg, who, by the way, I hope is still a friend, we can disagree with each other, should not be canceled or put off her show, as much as I totally disagree with her crazy statement. Free speech. She should be there. She shouldn't get a timeout.
Not every single thing has to be for everybody.
Right.
We can have platforms that have stuff on them that not everyone on that platform or who consumes stuff on that platform enjoys. And The View is a particularly weird place to do a cancellation.
It's called The View?
It's called The View. It's not called The Facts.
Yeah, but isn't it interesting that it's called, I mean, I don't think they meant this when Barbara Walters invented it a long time ago, but it's The View.
In an era where common sense is basically on life support, it took a Fox News provocateur and a freewheeling libertarian gadfly to finally voice what the rest of us have been muttering into the abyss. The View has morphed into The Shriek, noisy, chaotic, grasping for relevance, and about as profound as a TikTok comment section typed in a blind rage. And here's the knockout blow. If The View genuinely craves balance, ditch the revolving door of bobblehead guests and handpick dissenters who nod just enough to keep the peace. Instead, throw Greg and Bill into the hosting chairs. No, really, plop them right at that table, shoulder to shoulder with the usual crew, and broadcast the whole thing live, unfiltered, like a dysfunctional family reunion with no escape hatch. Let the audience soak in the glorious awkwardness, the clenched jaws, the side eyes, and the sanctimonious armor splintering like a cheap wine glass under pressure. Or better yet, skip the drama and just slap a new label on the show, call it The Groan. Because that's the soundtrack of the audience these days. Groans, winces, and a lingering question hanging in the air. When will someone, anyone, finally say something that doesn't sound like it was scripted by a hashtag generator? Turns out that someone ended up being the court jesters, and somehow they outshone the entire big top.